How can anyone, whether they want to work in a language school or privately from their own laptop anywhere in the world, create a rewarding and impactful career teaching English as a second language, even if they are just starting out or have no teaching experience or ability? Hi, my name is Lynette Kim, and here on the TESOL Talk podcast, I aim to answer that very question.
In lots of ESL schools, both in Australia and overseas, students can get a penalty for speaking their own language in the ESL classroom. And you probably think, wow, that's a little bit harsh. I mean, particularly when you're looking at beginner students who know very little, almost nothing, how on earth are they going to learn English if they can't be bilingual? And shouldn't the teacher at least be bilingual and understand the language of the students and also English so that they can help students to learn? And the answer is categorically no. The whole premise behind ESL teaching is total immersion. And this means in the ESL classroom, only English is spoken, all the materials, everything in the classroom, it's all in English. And so here in Australia, it's not such a big problem because you've got different cultures coming in. And yes, you might get a few students from the same nationality in one ESL classroom and a few from another and a couple, one or two from different ones. So you've got a really good multicultural mix. So speaking in their own language isn't such a big problem. And when you're a teacher, you can sit students next to someone of a different culture, and that really does bring right down that possibility for them to use their own language. But when you're teaching overseas, well, you know, the whole class is in the same language, and so you'd think, oh, as a teacher, shouldn't I know their language so that I can help them better? No, again, because that's not what you're there for. You're there to give them that total immersion experience, and it actually really does help learning if they're not able to do that. The only exception is where students have their dictionaries, and for some vocabulary they might check in the dictionaries for words. But barring that, all the communication is in English. And I've seen students struggle with this, but it does work. And so in the classroom, when I've taught beginners and they're looking at you with these blank looks, you get really good really quickly at the concepts and skills that you learn in your TESOL course. For example, total physical response. Now, total physical response is where you have to demonstrate or you have to show the items, the concrete reality that represents the words you're using. So, for example, chair, you would point at or touch a chair. Verbs, action verbs, walk, dance. You know, you can use your fingers, you can use your hands for body language, or you can actually just demonstrate it. And I've had beginner classes up, walking around, going to this point in the room, doing this pointing. I mean, there's a lot of physical action happening in a beginner class, absolutely with children, but even when you're teaching adults, you'll see that. And it adds to lots of fun and lots of activity and lots of laughter in the classroom, plenty of mistakes, but that's all okay because the whole class are beginners. But the one thing that the schools don't want you to do is to use the student's language. So you don't need to have a second language to go and teach English overseas or to teach English in Australia or online. What you do need is to know how to use your body language effectively and how to use TPR, and you need to understand how to communicate really well from a non-verbal aspect as well as a verbal aspect with your students. And that can sometimes come down to the tone of your voice, how you pause, and the way that you will demonstrate things. And the very lower levels, as you learn in with TESOL, is you're going to be demonstrating everything, and you're going to draw little characters on the board. You get really good really quickly at stick figure drawing, and it doesn't matter how bad you are at this stuff because it's just comical and everyone has fun with it. But it is something to consider. But as you go up through the levels, you're going to adjust it so your body language doesn't have to be quite as elaborate. It can like settle down a bit. By the time you get to intermediate level, which is the 50-50 level, students at that point, they understand 50% of what you're saying and 50% they don't. So, you're still demonstrating, but it's not to that level. It's just more than what you would do for if you were speaking to native speakers, but certainly not like with the beginner levels. And then once you get to upper intermediate, you're really interacting the same way that you would with native speakers. So your whole body language becomes more appropriate, and it's teaching them to use that type of body language when speaking in natural settings as well. So it's a lot of fun. And I've always felt really guilty because I've taught English as a second language overseas, online, and here in Australia for over 30 years. And I only have very basic Korean, and I've lived in Korea and taught in Korea twice, and I've never become a fluent Korean speaker or reader. And so it makes me feel really bad because here am I always helping students to learn English, which is what they're after, but I feel like a bit of a cheat because I haven't really, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. I haven't really, put that effort in myself just because I've been so busy. I've always wanted to learn it though. But you want success for your students, then get really, really good at thinking about how you can demonstrate, how you can draw, how you can use your facial expressions, your hands, your body language to help your students get the most out of every lesson that you teach.